Finn nonchalantly picked up his glass and took a sip of wine. Glancing reproachfully at the stone-faced Tristan, he grumbled, "I don't know why you called Charles over." "It's because what we are about to discuss requires Charles' input." Tristan tapped his fingers on the table and turned to look at his old friend. "You were the one who incited Albert and caused all these problems. Albert is extremely volatile. None of us can guarantee that his words are true. Even if he did speak the truth, he might not continue to act on his words. He's an unpredictable man who's prone to changing his mind at any moment." Tristan's speech clearly indicated his stance on the matter. "I agree with Tristan. My dear Tang, this plan won't bring you any trouble." The gleeful expression on Charles' face made Finn think that it would definitely bring him a lot of trouble. "You two won't change your minds despite my opinions, am I right?" As any further dispute on his part would not change the outcome, Finn was better off facing the unavoidable reality rather than trying to argue. As a businessman, Tristan would definitely prioritize things that were to his benefit. Besides, Tristan's attitude ensured that Charles would not make a move on him easily. Their collaboration would also prevent Albert from making contact with him, resulting in everyone being suspended in a delicate state of equilibrium. For now, it didn't matter how long this balance would last, there were many things that had the leeway to be discussed or compromised on. In essence, it was the self-protection method of the weaker animal among a pack of beasts. "How to get along with your horse?" Charles read out the words displayed on the tablet. It was evening. The sun had set and the room had air conditioning. "Yes, there will be a comprehensive exam at the end of the training class. I don't have a lot of prior experience in horse riding." Finn scratched his head and sighed. The only area he was unqualified in was horse riding. He would even go so far as to say that he was a whole level behind the other trainees. "Darling, you were right to look for me. I have a riding field back in England where I keep many beautiful horses. Moreover, I even have the qualifications to be a jockey. Why not practice with the real deal and have me as your coach?" Tristan walked over from the bar with 2 glasses of iced whiskey in his hands. Handing a cup of whiskey to Finn, Tristan took a seat on the actor's other side and smirked. "No, it would be a waste of time going to England as it's too far. I've already invited Kai to film at my riding field. I'll also be acting as the coach and will instruct the remaining celebrities." "Good idea, I don't like flying all over the place within the short time frame we have," Finn said in approval after taking a drink of the whiskey. Since Finn approved, there wasn't a point for Charles to continue arguing. He looked suspiciously at the glasses of whiskey in Finn and Tristan's hands. "Why isn't there a glass for me? I only have 2 hands." Tristan raised his glass, implying that the other should go and pour his own. "You're so biased." Leaving behind those angry words, Charles ran off to get a drink. "You guys aren't going out tonight?" He recalled that both Charles and Tristan weren't the type to house sit. They were more of the type to return home after 9 in the evening every day. 3 adult men like themselves couldn't just sit on the sofa together and watch primetime dramas, so Finn suggested playing cards. The other 2 didn't object to his suggestion. The 3 of them sat together playing cards while drinking and smoking. "I win again," Finn laughed unrestrainedly as he raised his right hand to take a drink and his left hand to leisurely collect the bets. "What time is it?" Finn finished collecting his winnings unhurriedly. He was dizzy from drinking too much alcohol, but that didn't prevent him from storing away his hard-won earnings. He felt especially good as he was able to beat Tristan and Charles into such miserable states. "It's almost 12:30. You should sleep as you still have the training class tomorrow," Tristan said as he tossed his cards aside. He stood and helped the flushed Finn to his feet. As soon as he saw the soft, large bed waiting for him inside, Finn impatiently crashed onto the mattress and buried his head into a pillow with no intention of moving again. The next day, Finn woke up to uncomfortable heat. He had so much to drink last night that his entire person was listless. "Heavens, I still have class." Finn slapped his head forcefully and inadvertently caught a glimpse of the clock hanging on the wall. The clock indicated that it was 9:15 in the morning, and his class started at 9:30. Finn immediately struggled to get out of bed. Finn collapsed onto the soft pillow, his head becoming even dizzier with the movement. "I feel like 100 elephants had stomped all over my head." Warm sunlight trickled down to earth from the dark blue skies. Each fragment of light carried with it the fragrance of the sun. They tumbled, fell, and dusted the people below like sand flowing through a sieve. Horses' hooves thudded across the ground, raising up clouds of red earth as they went. Mixed with the sunlight, the dust seemed like a sandstorm belonging to the world of ants. Sweat dripped through his riding helmet as Finn grasped the reins of his horse and urged it into a trot. Beside him was Tristan, decked out in similar riding gear. "Don't be scared," Tristan said. Like he had promised, Tristan took 2 hours from his schedule to give Finn a horse riding lesson. An hour had already passed and Finn's biggest improvement was that he could hold the reins by himself and trot around the riding fields. Occasionally, Tristan still had to come over and give the reins a tug so that Finn's horse didn't wander off by itself to snack on the grass. After being baked under the sun for over an hour, the two men moved to the side to rest and watched as the horses grazed on the grass. Time passed rapidly and in the blink of an eye, only 6 weeks remained until the filming for director Liam's movie started. True Star training class was slowly reaching its end and classes were beginning to wrap up. Most of the trainees decided to use the time left over to practice the skills they had learned so that they could give a good performance during the final exams. After working up a sweat in their dance class, Finn stood together with a few other trainees and chatted while gulping down bottles of water. At that moment, a staff member suddenly called out Finn's name. The cameras were immediately turned off and Tristan walked out from a hidden corner. "Come with me," Tristan said as he grabbed Finn's hand and dragged him out of the practice room under the eyes of curious onlookers. They walked to Finn's room in the apartment building. Tristan closed the door forcefully behind them and turned to look at the actor. Finn was still holding a towel in his hands, his hair dripping wet with sweat. "What's wrong?" It was rare for Tristan to come looking for him directly. Seeing the other's hastiness, Finn felt he was about to hear some bad news. "What is going on between you and Mitch?" Tristan handed his phone over to Finn, a frown marring his face. Finn accepted the phone and fixed his eyes on the screen. It was a newspaper article with a shocking title: "Finn met privately with the popular TV host Mitch. Details about their old love." Tristan crossed his arms and voiced out his question like he was interrogating a criminal. Finn skimmed through the article. "These sorts of articles always contain a bunch of nonsense. Mitch was sick that day, so I took him home." Finn smiled faintly and handed the phone back to Tristan. "I only went to see him because I wanted to apologize for all the idiotic things I've done in the past." "You stayed for the whole night?" "He had a fever." "You truly are a kind person," Tristan said with a hint of sarcasm. He snorted lightly and continued, "You weren't careful enough of your surroundings. Don't forget that there are always people watching you. You can't let anyone get hold of information that can be used against you." "I know. There's no point talking about that now. If we had the time, why don't we use it to think about how we're going to handle the media?" Compared to Tristan, Finn appeared rather relaxed despite it being his scandal. He motioned for Tristan to sit and poured them both a glass of whiskey. After handing a glass to Tristan, he took a seat beside the president. Tristan took a sip of his whiskey. "You have an idea?" Tristan asked expressionlessly. "There have been more and more scandals about me lately and it's only going to get worse. At the end of this, the public is going to see me as someone who has a chaotic private life." Finn took a swig from his glass of whiskey and smiled at Tristan. "I have an idea, but you'll have to make the final decision." Tristan lifted an eyebrow in response. "Let's hear it." Taking care of the issues in the conventional way would be ineffective in keeping up with the recent developments. If we go with rumors, I think we can expect many of them to fall for it. Tristan smiled. How exactly had Finn come up with such an unconventional gambit of a plan? It was dangerous, but Tristan couldn't help but admit that it was brilliant. "As far as I know, my PR team would have never been able to come up with such a daring plan." "It'll only appear real if it's daring." Seeing that Tristan's eyes were on him, Finn shrugged with a smile. "I've studied psychology before. I took lessons because I had the role of a psychologist for a film." Tristan stood up and looked down at Finn as he said, "I'll take care of this matter according to your plan." "Thank you." Finn stood up as well. "Rather than words, I much prefer action when it comes to expressing." That was one similar point between Tristan and Charles, their business-oriented mindset. "What do you want?" Finn smiled as he asked. "I'll tell you when I've decided on something." The corners of Tristan's lips quirked up in a smirk. "That sounds a bit scary." As planned, several people claiming to be insiders took to the discussion boards and started an explosion of new rumors barely a day after the scandal involving Finn and Mitch dominated the headlines. When fake and real information collided, it would often be difficult to discern which was real and which was fake. Rather, things that were half-true caught people's attention much more. The proclaimed insiders explained everything clearly and succinctly. Moreover, the information they provided could be linked up with actual happenings. After reading through their explanations, it was hard not to believe them. The headlines decorating the newspapers today were a bit different from what he had discussed with Tristan. No matter how he looked at it, The news was going a bit overboard with describing his rampant popularity. The melodrama of the whole situation was enough to make him laugh. It was even more exciting than a romantic comedy airing on prime time. People instantly stopped paying attention to the whole scandal with Mitch. As for the things that had been used to sully his name before, they now brought him no more harm than the interest of the public and topics for discussion. Did all those articles bring you any sort of trouble? Finn made a special call to Mitch. After Tristan had the insiders work their magic, Mitch hadn't contacted Finn once. No. It's all a bunch of nonsense anyways. I'm already used to it. Don't worry, I'm completely fine. Mitch's voice didn't sound all that different from normal on the other end of the line. Before the training class final examination, the Tristan Group's PR department deliberately reached out to select media outlets and divulged some vague information. Finn was going to act in a Hollywood film. Not as a side character, but as the male lead. Finn suddenly felt a bit pressured by all the attention. If he didn't do well in his work, then it wouldn't be fair to the great lengths Tristan had gone for him. I remember that you didn't like coffee before, Mitch questioned, looking at the cup of black coffee mixed with milk in front of Finn. Coincidentally, the two of them were sitting right in front of a portrait of the well-respected actor, Fiennes Tang. Once people start getting old, they start appreciating bitter drinks, Finn said half seriously, brushing the topic aside. He lifted his cup and swirled the dark liquid inside. I'll be going to the United States next month. So the rumors were true? Mitch questioned, widening his eyes. He hadn't expected Finn to come out and directly affirm his suspicions. The actor nodded and responded, the movie has been in the preparation stage for several months now. I'll be joining the cast for filming next month. It'll probably be 3 months before I come back. Being very familiar with Hollywood's workflow, Finn had managed to calculate a rough estimate of the filming schedule for himself. That's fine. Mitch nodded as he held his coffee cup between his hands. He smiled and said, after you become an international superstar, don't forget about your old friends like me. Finn immediately adopted the proud air of a famous celebrity. Don't worry. After I make a name for myself, I'll grant you the honor of conducting an exclusive interview with me. Show off. So what's going on between you and Tristan? Mitch didn't fail to make his usual sharp remarks. The things mentioned in those news articles were rather sensational. Tristan must have put a lot of effort into doing all of this for you. Finn shook his head. I have a good future ahead of me. He sees that and the commercial value in investing in me. It's natural for him to want to cultivate a promising seedling. Since when did Tristan personally promote actors under his own company? I don't think he's the kind of person who would listen to someone else and do as they say. No matter what, you better keep on acting smart as you are now. You don't need to worry about me. I've already experienced the worst life has to offer. There's nothing that can trouble me now. Plus, isn't it much easier for a nonchalant person like me to butt heads with the world? This is off topic, but wouldn't Gab be furious after reading the news about you and Tristan? A sliver of glee snaked into Mitch's eyes. He raised his chin in satisfaction and said, I've never liked him. Despite being otherwise, he still likes acting vulnerable and innocent. Whenever something happens, he'd find a scapegoat to take the fall for him. If his movie doesn't sell, then it's the director's fault. If he happens to go off key during a concert, then it must be due to faulty acoustics. If some type of scandal involving him happens to be aired out to the public, then it must be because a rival wants to frame him. In the end, he's nothing without Sutton. Mitch snuck a glance at Finn and added quietly, speaking of which, I've recently heard something from co-workers of mine. There was nothing going on between Tristan and Gab. All the rumors were lies spread by the media. Finn stared in surprise at the other, but nodded with a smile afterwards. I have to go to the restroom, Mitch said, while standing up. Okay. Finn sat at their table alone and pulled out his phone to look at the news out of boredom. After scrolling through a few vapid articles, he exited out of the news application and pulled out his headphones. He tapped on his music library and started playing the song he needed for the performance he would be putting on in the training class in a few days. Barely a few seconds into the song, Finn felt someone's presence in front of him. He took off his headphones and looked up. When Mitch came back to his seat, Finn was already gone. Finn disappeared. Mitch initially thought that the actor had simply gone outside and would be back after a short while. After all, Finn's wallet and phone were still on the table. However, after waiting for 5 minutes, Mitch couldn't sit still and wait anymore. He quickly went around and asked the waiters and the other patrons of the coffee shop if they had seen where Finn had gone. The only reply he received was that a man dressed in a suit had grabbed Finn by the arm and left the coffee shop with him. Mitch immediately pulled out his phone and called Tristan. The president quickly drove over to the coffee shop and picked up the things Finn had left behind. He told Mitch not to worry, most likely, Finn had chosen to leave with somebody he knew. After warning Mitch to keep quiet about the matter, Tristan left the coffee shop. Who do you think took Finn away? While driving, Tristan called Charles. I don't think it's Albert. The scene looked too clean for him to have been the one. So you're thinking it's someone he knows? Correct. All right, I've already dispatched people to track down Finn's whereabouts. From the tone of your voice, you don't seem very worried about him. Charles snorted in response. Tristan tightened his grip on the steering wheel and narrowed his eyes slightly. He sneered and said, there isn't anyone around Finn who would want to harm him. If money is their goal, they would be contacting us instead. Finn felt muddle-headed and dizzy, as if an elephant had stomped over his head while he was unconscious. His whole person was stuck in the delicate state between disorientation and wakefulness. Slightly uncomfortable, he took a light breath and tried forcing his mind to clarity before opening his eyes. It seems I've used too much. Here, have a drink. You'll feel better soon. A familiar voice sounded beside Finn's ear. He felt someone prop him up and lay him against the headboard of the bed. Soon, he felt the touch of cool water wetting his dry lips. Instinctively, he opened his mouth and gulped down the water. After taking in some water, Finn felt much better. Even though he had a raging headache, he was at least out of dreamland and could think more clearly. His thick lashes fluttered when he opened his dark eyes. There was a hint of exhaustion and confusion in his eyes, but they clearly reflected the portrait of a man dressed in a black and white checkered suit. Sutton. Finn remembered someone walking up to his table at the coffee shop. He had thought Mitch had returned from the restroom and was marveling at his speed when he looked up to see Sutton. The man had beamed at him before covering the lower part of his face with a paper towel. Finn remembered feeling disgusted by the smell before losing consciousness and all his strength. President Sue, there's no need to go through all this trouble if you wanted to meet with me. A simple phone call would have been enough. Finn felt a bit weak and leaned against the stack of pillows behind him. The drug that Sutton had used to knock him out still hadn't fully left his system. Besides having a headache, he also felt an uncomfortable weight on his chest. This had been totally out of his expectations. Did this count as an abduction or a kidnapping? You don't have to worry. I won't harm you. Sutton smiled faintly. He appeared relaxed and pleased with himself. He stood up and placed the glass in his hands on a nearby table. Taking advantage of the moment, Finn glanced around and took in his surroundings. The curtains hadn't been completely pulled shut. Judging from the light that shot through the crack, it was the afternoon. He shouldn't have been unconscious for too long. That meant the place he was at now was close to the city. Did you bring me here because of Gab? Finn pulled his eyes away from the curtains silently. He snuck glances at the furniture inside the room. Everything appeared normal. There was a closet, a table, and a TV. Holding a copy of the newspaper in his hand, Sutton walked over to sit on the upholstered chair beside the bed. He crossed his legs and spread open the newspaper. I heard you'll be going to America to film for a movie next month. Congratulations. Thank you. Finn supported his head with one hand and raked his hair with the other. Did President Sue bring me here to have a chat? Am I not allowed to? Despite having come across each other often, we haven't had the chance to sit down and have a conversation together. We had a conversation together back at the riding fields. Finn deliberately dragged the conversation back to a topic related to Gab. He could only think of one reason that Sutton would kidnap him. As expected, Sutton glanced at him from behind the newspaper. With a gentle smile on his face, he said, Gab is only part of the reason why I brought you here. He stared at Finn with piercing, dissecting eyes, but the actor faced his stare straight on without even a hint of fear. Because of you, he abandoned Gab. Just like that, he didn't want Gab anymore, Sutton said simply. Maybe it's because they were never together to begin with? Sutton narrowed his eyes at Finn's response. Then suddenly, he reached out and gripped the other's chin, forcing Finn to look up. Tristan has given me quite a number of presents during our acquaintance together. I think it's time for me to repay him with a present of my own, since he obviously cares about you so much. Finn sighed, appearing rather helpless. If you wanted to take revenge on Tristan for snatching someone away from you, then you shouldn't have kidnapped me. If Tristan truly cares about me, then why did he leave me at Charles and call for an entire month? You should know about this. Why wouldn't he have done that? He even sent Gab to stay by my side. Tristan is an exceedingly logical man. And as an intelligent businessman, he understands how to grab hold of the best opportunities. Right now, you are his biggest opportunity. He cares about your future. When Sutton uttered the last word, a strange feeling came over Finn. From your words, it seems as if you want to ruin my future. Some battles can only be fought through the sacrifices of your subordinates. If Tristan can install a spy beside me and try to control my internal affairs, then I'm also allowed to return the favor and give him a present. Sutton's reply shocked Finn greatly. Gab was actually a spy Tristan had sent to observe Sutton? Under the covers, Finn worked at slowly clenching and unclenching his hands. Getting his strength back earlier would be a welcome advantage. Sutton smiled and called out, "Bring them in." The door leading to the room opened. A few men dressed in black carried numerous cameras inside and placed them to the left and right of the bed. Tristan and I can never return to the collaborative partnership we've had before. Since that's the case, I at least want to take what I desire while I have the chance. I won't hurt you. I only need a recording that will make Tristan uneasy. For a celebrity, a compromising recording was like a ticking bomb waiting to go off at any moment. You never knew when it would be leaked and what it would do to your career. It was a crude and vulgar tactic. And unfortunately, one that was used all too often. Finn suddenly felt a bit uncomfortable. The room wasn't hot, but he felt as if every pore on his body were pouring out sweat. Even though he felt dizzy, his mind was sharp to the point of overkill. It was an odd contradiction. What did you give me earlier? Experience told Finn that Sutton hadn't given him anything good. A glass of water. Sutton glanced at the cup sitting on the nearby table. It was completely empty. Finn had drunk all of its contents. It'll make you feel better, and it'll make the recording more realistic. Shit, it had been an aphrodisiac. Finn couldn't resist cursing under his breath. Why did people enjoy playing around with those kind of stuff? It was crude and in poor taste, and thoroughly depressing in how effective it was. Sutton pulled at his tie and managed to pull the knot free after 2 or 3 tries. He tossed the tie aside. Often, people who appeared to be cultured and highly intelligent had a strange and perverse side to them. Perhaps it was because they spent so much time suppressing their desires every day that when they reached their limits, they would explode in a terrifying manner. Sutton leveled a look at Finn and gripped the actor's shoulders rather forcefully. "I like your eyes. I've thought that they were beautiful ever since I had first met you." Finn's lips were caught in a rough kiss and he deliberately shouted out loud in alarm. Bang, the door slammed open. The 2 men dressed in black rushed inside the room, holding guns in their hands. Finn glanced at the guns. He didn't think those were toys they were carrying. "Get out," Sutton yelled after being abruptly interrupted. "Get out of my sight. Without an order from me, you are not allowed to come in." Sutton's 2 lackeys glanced at Finn and concluded that a person who had been drugged couldn't possibly beat their boss in a fight. With that thought in mind, they obediently left the room and closed the door behind them. Once the door was closed, Sutton became even more invigorated, his hands persistently fondling Finn. An arrogant man would not think to bind up a drugged victim. Finn had both his hands on Sutton's back and slowly inched them towards the man's neck. "I don't feel well." With one hand supported on Sutton's shoulder, Finn's other hand continuously felt at the man's neck. His seemingly flirtatious action concealed his real intentions. Since the start of his rebirth, Finn had tried his hand at many things he did not previously have the chance to do. Horse riding was one, another was his much talked about Chinese martial arts. Well, hopefully his training was enough. "You will start to feel good very soon." Indulging in the dip of Finn's neck, Sutton bit and nibbled at the man's shoulder and collarbone. The time to strike was now. He struck down with the hand that had been softly stroking Sutton's neck. At the same instant, Finn kissed Sutton to smother the other's groan. Sutton closed his eyes and slowly collapsed onto Finn. The actor was covered in sweat, some of it from the drug, but most of it was from the tension. He was an actor, not a Secret Service agent. Enduring the effects of the drug in his body, Finn dragged Sutton to the bathroom and dumped him into the bathtub. Then, he used Sutton's leather belt to bind his hands and feet together, and stuffed his tie into his mouth. When this was all finished, Finn was completely drenched in sweat. The 2 bodyguards at the door did not wander too far away. They both wore expressions of extreme boredom. "Hasn't it been a while? Are we still filming? I have to say that actor didn't look too bad." The other man walked across and pressed his ear against the door to listen. Suddenly, he furrowed his brows and said quietly to his companion, "There aren't any sounds coming from inside. Could something have happened? You want to barge in? Boss is going to cuss you out." "Boss?" The bodyguard at the door knocked quietly. There was no reply from inside. The 2 men looked at each other and figured that something wasn't right. Let's check. They pushed open the door a little bit and peeked in. They saw the mess on the bed, but not a single shadow of a person inside. Just as they were about to rush in, the sound of a man sobbing came from the bathroom. They had the tact to understand what was going on. They closed the door stealthily behind them, chuckling to themselves. I reckon it'll be quite a while before they finish. The other bodyguard drew out a pack of cigarettes and started smoking with his colleague. In the bathroom, Finn faced the mirror expressionlessly while washing his hands, simultaneously letting out very imaginative sounds and snippets of conversation. Only when he had heard the near inaudible sound of the door clicking shut did he stop his vividly realistic performance. The situation was both strange and somewhat funny. How was my acting, Mr. Sutton? Finn grabbed a towel and dried his hands. He firmly shut the bathroom door and sat down on the toilet seat cover. Finn let out a sound of frustration and whipped Sutton's head with the towel in his hands. He lowered his voice and swore, "You really are a disgusting man." Sutton's breathing roughed as he stared at Finn. "Do you like my eyes? Unfortunately, I don't like yours at all." Throwing the towel aside, Finn swung his hand and slapped Sutton on the cheek, the sound resounding inside the bathroom. Unluckily, Finn didn't have a cell phone with him, otherwise, he'd have stripped Sutton naked and taken a few suggestive photos. Sutton was someone who had both reputation and prestige. After suffering a beating at Finn's hands, a hint of anger bled into Sutton's eyes. "Now you're angry?" Finn flicked Sutton's forehead with a finger. The skin quickly turned red and swollen. "I'm even angrier than you." Having beaten him enough, Finn felt marginally better. He was lucky to have caught Sutton off guard and dealt with him. However, that didn't mean he was prepared to face the two professionally trained and armed bodyguards empty-handed. Should he sit and wait for death? Finn calmed down and started planning his next move. The two men posted outside the door would eventually come inside. He had no way of communicating with the outside world. He stood up and walked to the window inside the bathroom. He brought over a chair and stepped on it to look outside. He appeared to be inside the mansion area of a luxurious hotel. There was a forest and lake nearby, but not many people down below. Escaping wasn't impossible, but he was on the third floor. How was he going to get down? The effects of the drug had mostly dispersed by now, but his body was still somewhat tired. If he used the curtains to climb out, would he fall off halfway? If he yelled for help, would anyone hear him? Regardless, doing anything was better than sitting around doing nothing. Suddenly, an idea came into Finn's head and he glanced at Sutton with a malicious glint in his eyes. Sutton had probably never looked as pathetic as he did now in the past few decades. At Finn's sudden stare, Sutton's eyelid twitched in suspicion. After all that he had suffered through, he knew Finn wasn't as gentle as his image suggested. 10 minutes later, Finn had knotted the curtains into a thick rope. He fastened one end around his own waist, before tying the other around Sutton's body. Now he didn't have to worry about falling to the ground if his grip were to slip. Even if he did fall, he didn't care that Sutton would be dragged out of the bathtub and slam his head against the toilet from the impact. Sutton glared intensely at Finn, looking as if he wanted to swallow the actor whole. Finn couldn't resist giving the man another slap on the face. "I don't like people staring at me like that." Finn stepped onto the chair and pushed open the bathroom window. He stuck his head out and looked around. The sky was decorated with the light of the setting sun and there was a delightfully warm breeze. When he looked at the ground, however, he felt a wave of nausea envelop him as a slight chill ran down his back. Despite being thoroughly healthy, it seemed like his heart disease was determined to make a reappearance. "I can do this, I can climb down." Taking a deep breath, Finn bent and swung one leg outside to straddle the windowsill. Just as he was taking inspiration from the valor of Secret Service agents, the bathroom door burst open. Shocked, Finn made to leap down, but a figure rushed in and grabbed onto the curtains that were connected to him. "You're crazy." Cold sweat ran down Tristan's back. When he rushed into the bathroom, he'd barely caught sight of a man who looked like Finn preparing to jump from the window. Without any hesitation or thought, he dashed over at his fastest speed and instinctively grabbed onto the rope of curtains. "Tristan?" Finn blinked at the insult. He snuck a glance at the ground below his feet. The height alone was enough to make him dizzy. He quickly turned around and grasped the window ledge with both hands. He yelled at Tristan, "What are you waiting for? Pull me up already." His legs felt like jelly. Tristan wasn't the kind of person who would let someone yell at him without any retaliation. But at the moment, he didn't have the leisure to worry about so many things. He ignored Finn's tone and stepped forward to grab the actor's hand, pulling him inside bit by bit. When Charles came into the bathroom, he was faced with the scene of Tristan pulling Finn inside. Darling, where is that swine Sutton? Behind you, Finn hopped down from the window with Tristan's assistance. He was exhausted after having his nerves stretched taut for the whole day. He collapsed into Tristan's arms, not able to muster any more energy. No matter how irritating Tristan and Charles normally were, at least now he felt safe and warm. I'm hungry. I also want to sleep, Finn murmured. Close your eyes for a while. You can eat after you rest. Tristan covered Finn's eyes. After loosening the reins on his willpower, Finn quickly fell asleep.